In my past life, I was nothing but a joke. Sophia Young had always been frail and sickly since childhood, yet all of my parents' love and favoritism went to her. For the sake of wealth and status, she chose to marry the factory director's son. The very next day, my childhood fiancé Daniel Wilson came to propose. I thought my secret crush had finally blossomed into something real, but I was nothing more than Sophia Young's substitute. When Sophia's husband died in an accident, her in-laws branded her as a cursed widow and threw her out. Later, when I was in the late stage of pregnancy, I felt unwell. Yet Daniel Wilson abandoned me at home and went out to enjoy himself with Sophia. In the end, I suffered a miscarriage, bled heavily, and died. Reborn, I swore things would be different. I pushed Daniel Wilson toward Sophia, so they could finally become the star-crossed lovers they longed to be. My hands clenched the bed sheets beneath me, sweat dripping from my forehead down my back as unease consumed me. Scenes from my past life flashed before my eyes. I was lying helpless in a hospital bed again. The doctor hovered over me with instruments, trying desperately to save me. My amniotic fluid mixed with blood, gushing out uncontrollably. I watched, wide-eyed, as my child slipped away from me. My eyelids grew heavy, and darkness claimed me. With trembling hands, I held onto my phone. The ringtone buzzed 3 times before Daniel Wilson finally picked up. "Chloe Hall, are you done? Stop blowing up my phone already." His voice was full of irritation. "Daniel, I'm in labor. I'm so scared. Can you please come to the hospital?" My voice was weak, trembling. "Chloe Hall, you're a grown woman. And now you're using our child as an excuse to get me home. Don't you think you're going too far?" "No, that's not it. Listen to me." My voice cracked, barely audible. But before I could explain, the cold beep, beep, beep of a disconnected call pierced my ears. "Doctor, please save my child," I begged, clutching at the doctor's coat with what little strength I had left. I jolted awake, heart pounding, arms instinctively wrapping around my belly. But the familiar roundness was gone. My hands touched only a slender waist. My eyes widened in shock. I glanced around. The walls were peeling, patched up with scraps of paper. At the foot of the bed sat an old wooden cabinet with chipped paint, threatening to collapse at any second. The small room was cluttered with junk, dampness in the air filling my lungs with the stench of mold. I covered my nose, fighting the urge to gag. Recognition struck me like lightning. My pupils contracted sharply. I'd gone back to the past. This was my room before I married. My parents, both textile workers with long years of service, had been assigned a modest two-bedroom apartment. They took one room, and at first, I shared the other with Sophia Young. But Sophia complained that my restless sleeping disturbed her, that she couldn't get any rest with me around. My parents, hearts aching for their fragile darling, threw me out that very night into the storage room. A bed cobbled together from discarded planks became my home for 6 long years. In my past life, I swallowed these injustices in silence. I opened the rickety cabinet, its door creaking as though ready to fall off. Holding it with one hand, I dug through clothes with the other. Every piece was patched, outdated, dull in color, nothing like what a teenage girl should wear. My parents bought them only because they were cheap. The few decent items I had were cast-offs from Sophia. Compared to my own rags, I still preferred wearing her unwanted clothes. Parched, I reached for the battered tin kettle just as my mother returned from work. She took one look at the room and scowled. "Chloe Hall, can't you see how messy this place is? I work all day exhausted, and you can't even clean up to spare me the trouble?" The table still had unwashed bowls, grease stains smeared across its surface, candy wrappers scattered on the floor. "I cleaned everything this morning," I said softly. Sophia got up late, ate breakfast, and left without tidying up. Just as the words left my mouth, Sophia came through the door after a carefree day out. She wore a floral dress, her wind braids falling neatly over her chest. Her skin, untouched by housework, was porcelain smooth. No wonder Daniel Wilson preferred her. And then there was me, rough hands calloused and cracked, my face dull and weary. Sophia shrank back, hiding behind our mother with wide, innocent eyes brimming with tears. Sister, how could you accuse me of being lazy? I know you've always been jealous because our parents love me more, but that doesn't mean you can lie about me. Her voice trembled with fragility, and her eyes red and with unshed tears. It's my fault, she whispered hoarsely. I've always been too weak to help mother and father. I should have done more. She coughed softly into her handkerchief, looking pitiful. Don't get upset, Sophia, mother fussed, gathering her into her arms and patting her back gently. Then she turned on me, eyes full of venom. You're the older sister, yet all you ever do is bully your younger sister. Apologize to her now or don't blame me if I disown you. If only you were half as thoughtful as Sophia, she sneered. Sometimes I wonder if you were even my real daughter, or if the hospital mixed you up at birth. Her glare cut into me like knives, as if I were her mortal enemy. My chest tightened, suffocating me with pain. I stood there, unyielding and silent. Even the candies at home, mother always gave to Sophia behind my back. The evidence was plain to see, yet she chose to turn a blind eye. In the end, there wasn't blindness at all, just favoritism. Sophia Young loved to drive a wedge between me and my parents. I had tried to explain myself before, but my parents never believed me. Gradually, I grew quieter around them, retreating into silence. Leaning on our mother's shoulder, Sophia deliberately lifted her chin high, a sly smile tugging at her lips. Mom, don't blame sister. She didn't mean it. Mother helped Sophia into her chair and poured her a glass of warm water. Chloe Hall, why are you just standing there? Don't cook. Do you want me and your father to starve? When father returned, the three of them sat at the dining table, laughing and chatting happily, while I felt like an outsider. Mother placed a piece of braised pork into Sophia Young's bowl, and she ate it with relish. Each month our family received only a small ration of meat. Most of it went straight to Sophia and father. Rarely did I get the chance to eat anything meaty. Why shouldn't I be allowed to eat what I worked so hard to prepare? I reached for the chopsticks, intending to grab a piece of the braised pork. Mother snapped her chopsticks against my hand with a sharp smack, making the pain cause my grip to slip. Chloe Hall, how selfish can you be? We barely get enough meat as it is. Sophia is weak, she needs more to stay healthy, and your father works hard every day, he deserves to eat. Are you some glutton reincarnated? Anger bubbled inside me with nowhere to go. If you all can eat, why can't I? Fine, enjoy your meal. I'm full of anger already. I pushed the bowl aside and stormed out of the house. Chloe Hall, come back. Who told you to talk to your mother like that? You're getting more and more unruly. Father threw a bowl at me in anger. Quick reflexes saved me. The bowl grazed past my face, shattering on the floor. That was too close. Am I even his biological daughter? He almost tried to maim me. A woman's face is everything. I slammed the wooden door behind me, venting my frustration. James Miller, look at how spoiled she's become. She dares to throw tantrums at me now. I gave birth to her, raised her, and yet she shows no gratitude. Ungrateful wretch. Grace Miller, calm down. I'll deal with her when she comes back. Let's eat now, the food's getting cold. Sophia Young froze mid-motion, her expression suddenly somber. Dad, Mom, it's my fault I'm weak. I don't deserve meat. I should die early. If I weren't here, you wouldn't fight with sister. She wiped imaginary tears from her face, looking pitiful and fragile, making anyone watching feel sympathy for her. Father's voice softened. Sophia, don't say that. It's your sister being thoughtless, it has nothing to do with you. The most important thing now is to take care of your health. Sophia pressed her lips together, nodded slightly, and whispered, Ma'am. I wandered to the riverside for a walk, breathing in the fresh air. The place was empty, the water clear enough to see fish swimming freely. For a moment, I savored the peace. Every second spent with them at home suffocated me. Wrapped in a thin coat, just an hour outside and I felt the chill. I was about to head back when I spotted two familiar figures near the river. I hid behind a willow tree, craning my neck to listen. It was Daniel Wilson and Sophia Young. What were they doing here so late? Daniel, did you call me out here for something? Sophia asked softly. Sophia, I don't like Chloe. I like you. Sophia's cheeks flushed as she lowered her head. Daniel, you're my sister's fiancé and a young, promising company commander. She hesitated, then spoke slowly. You're a good man, but I can't hurt my sister. Daniel held Sophia's shoulders, looking into her eyes with unwavering intensity. My mother once decided on a Miller family daughter for our family. You're a Miller family daughter too, why can't it be you? Daniel, my sister loves you. For so many years, everyone thought she was your fiancé. If it suddenly switched to me, people wouldn't know and would gossip about me. I don't want to interfere with your relationship with sister. We are simply not meant to be. Pushing him away, Sophia turned without looking back. Daniel, I'll pretend I didn't hear what you just said. Please treat my sister well from now on. Sophia Young was truly cunning. When the Wilson family came to propose, she had looked down on my parents' ordinary factory workers and passed Daniel Wilson to me instead. Later, Daniel enlisted and through hard work, finally became a company commander. Still, Sophia didn't look at him. Although he was now a commander, his salary was modest and couldn't provide the wealth and status she desired. So in her previous life, she chose Michael Evans, the factory director's son. She carefully calculated her path, yet the marriage was far from happy. Michael Evans was abusive, drinking and hitting her. To prove she hadn't made a mistake, Sophia endured it alone. Michael Evans eventually died in a drunk driving accident, crashing into a tree, a horrifying scene. Sophia assumed his death would bring her happiness, only to be thrown out by a cruel mother-in-law, left penniless. From childhood, Sophia and I never got along. To make my life miserable, she used the same tactics she used on my parents, manipulating Daniel Wilson and driving a wedge between us. At first, our marriage had its moments of happiness. But after Sophia was sent away and returned to her parents' home, neighbors gossiped about her at every turn. She couldn't stand it, so my parents had her follow me when I joined the military, thinking a new environment where I knew her would help. Little did I know, it would turn out to be the worst decision I ever made. Eventually, Daniel Wilson and I drifted into a cold silence. He watched Sophia Young walk away, muttering under his breath, Sophia, the day my stepmother pushed me into the river and you saved me, I knew you were the one. I'll obey you, won't make things difficult, and one day I'll quietly be by your side as your brother-in-law. So that was the truth, it had been me who risked my life to save him all those years ago. After Daniel's mother passed away, his father remarried quickly. His stepmother had two faces, one for the public, one for private cruelty. We lived in the same alley, and I had accidentally seen several instances of her physically abusing him. That day when she dragged him toward the river, I couldn't help but follow, worried. When I saw him thrown into the water, I acted without thinking, diving in after him. 8-year-old Daniel Wilson was half a head taller than me, and it took all my strength to pull him out. Exhausted, I collapsed on the riverbank. I woke up at home, having spent so long in the river, chilled by the wind. I had a high fever and stayed in bed for a week. Yet Sophia Young had claimed credit for saving him. If Daniel Wilson knew he had the wrong person, would he regret how he treated me? Tears streaked down my cheeks, but I held my gaze on the sky, refusing to let them fall. I wiped my tears and walked toward Daniel Wilson. He met my eyes and instinctively looked away. Chloe, what a coincidence. You're here too. Not really a coincidence. I'd been at the riverside for over an hour, I replied. Daniel grasped my arm, a hint of panic flickering in his eyes. Chloe, listen to me. It's not what you think. I don't need an explanation, Daniel. You've already confused me enough. Didn't you see what happened just now? I shot back. It's too dark. How could I see anything? Daniel exhaled slowly. It's fine. I was just worried about you being out here alone. I'll walk you back. Since you like putting on a show, I'll play along. We walked in silence through the alley. Daniel, do you really think we're right for each other? Maybe we should just forget it, I muttered. What do you mean by that? Daniel's voice turned sharp. We've been childhood sweethearts. No one knows each other better than we do. Don't say that again. They all say you're a young and accomplished company commander. I'm not good enough for you, I said, lowering my gaze. If someone saw you close to a young, beautiful girl, if you liked her, I wouldn't blame you for breaking the engagement. I looked at him earnestly. Chloe, don't overthink. My wife will only ever be you. I don't want to marry yet. Let's break the engagement. Chloe, could you stop being unreasonable and learn a thing or two from your sister? His words hit me like an explosion in my head. Anger made my whole body tremble. So you like her that much? Fine, I'll break off the engagement just to make it easier for you too. Daniel didn't respond, and we parted unhappily. In my past life, I trusted him too much, and it ended in disaster. His selfishness ruined me for life. If you refuse to let go, don't blame me for being merciless. I will make that couple pay for what they've done. Daniel Wilson only had a little over 10 days of leave. I had to find a way to cancel the engagement. To outsiders, he was a young and promising commander. My parents would never approve of breaking it off, they'd just think I was ungrateful. Soon, the college entrance exam would resume. The first year's exam wasn't difficult, I had to seize this chance. The next day, I went to the recycling center. Sir, I'm looking for some scrap paper, to go home and study. The elderly man hunched over, smiling at me. Little girl, go in and find it yourself. I quickly gathered all the books I needed and handed him 60 cents, hardly anything, since the books were practically worthless. Hungry, I made my way to the state-run eatery. I sat alone in the corner. Boss, a bowl of plain noodles, please. The steaming bowl arrived quickly. I hadn't eaten properly since last night and had run out of the house. My stomach growled loudly as I devoured the noodles. Then I heard familiar voices. I looked up and saw Daniel Wilson with Sophia Young. Luckily, I was sitting out of their line of sight, they didn't notice me. Daniel gallantly pulled out a chair for Sophia, something he had never done for me. Sophia, make yourself comfortable. Entreating. You're overthinking, Daniel. Do as you like, I don't mind, she replied softly. Waiter, we'll have braised pork, braised beef, sweet and sour ribs, and radish rib soup. Hearing the dishes' names, I swallowed hard. Suddenly, my plain noodles seemed pitiful. I had done well in middle school, but my parents' wages couldn't support both of us studying. I had to drop out and work as a temporary laborer in the steel factory. Though the work was harsh, my wages were low, and most of it went to my mother. I hadn't eaten meat in ages. Later, the college entrance exam was cancelled. Sophia Young couldn't study either. My parents pampered her at home, forbidding her to work, letting her do nothing all day. After we married, I cherished Daniel's hard-earned money, and lived frugally. I didn't know exactly how much he earned, and I hadn't expected him to give most of his wages to Sophia Young without reservation. I really had misjudged him. Daniel, it's just the two of us, I muttered, keeping my eyes on my plain noodles. Out of sight, out of mind. When I looked up again, Daniel Wilson was gone, leaving only Sophia Young. Our eyes met, and she walked over. Sister, what a coincidence you're here too. Her gaze flicked to my simple noodles, a trace of mockery in her eyes. Look at you, eating this while Daniel treats me so well. Just look at the food on the table. Daniel probably never treats you like this. No one likes you, not your parents, not your fiancé. Poor thing. Sophia Young, you have no shame, I snapped. Going out for a private meal with your sister's fiancé, are you trying to be a mistress? Sophia staggered back a few steps and fell to the ground. With a face full of faint hurt, she looked at me. Sister, I only said a few words, why did you hit me? Out of nowhere, Daniel Wilson appeared, furious. He slapped me across the face, and pain exploded as my cheeks welled instantly. Chloe Hall, you're bullying Sophia again, she's your sister, why can't you accept her? I instinctively covered the blow, my ears ringing, my head spinning. It was clear he had put all his strength into that slap. Daniel helped Sophia to her feet, letting her lean weakly against him. I bit my lip hard, my gaze fixed on Daniel Wilson. Daniel Wilson, do you even consider me your fiancé? You didn't hear a word of my explanation and slapped me first thing. Sophia is already on the ground, what else matters? My fiancé ignores me during his leave but goes out with my sister. Am I in the way of you too? Daniel's voice lowered, losing some of its usual confidence. Chloe, you misunderstand. I just happened to run into Sophia. Our argument quickly drew a crowd. These young people are ridiculous. Your own sister and fiancé such scumbags. Shameful. You let your fiancé eat plain noodles while treating your sister to a feast. TSK embracing your sister-in-law in public, so shameless. The coincidence excuse is a lie, I saw them flirting with my own eyes. Hearing the murmurs, Sophia lowered her head in shame. Daniel Wilson, in breaking off this engagement. Chloe, let me explain later, Daniel called out, but they hurriedly left, unable to eat their meal, leaving me staring at the table, disappointed. Finally, the weekend arrived, and the bustling noise outside woke me. Daniel Wilson appeared at my house, accompanied by his father, carrying gifts in both hands. Cigarettes, wine, tea. Our living room was piled high. Mother pushed me toward him. Chloe, Commander Daniel brought gifts to formally propose. Go talk with him. Aunt, that's too formal. Just call him Daniel, Commander is too distant, I said flatly. Daniel Wilson's father stood politely to the side. Yes, we'll all be family from now on. Mother cradled the gifts greedily in her arms, a hint of anticipation in her eyes. Daniel tapped his knuckles lightly on the enamel jug, then looked at me. Chloe, I'd like to settle our engagement during this vacation. Do you have any ideas for the wedding? Daniel Wilson's father sipped his tea and cleared his throat. Chloe, you and Daniel are no longer children. It's time to think about marriage. I raised an eyebrow, expressionless. Finish talking? The door's over there, please leave. The two of them froze. Mother slapped my back, winking at me. What nonsense are you saying? Haven't you just woken up? Daniel Wilson, do you understand plain words? I told you yesterday I want to break the engagement. Why are you bringing your father here today? I refused to give Daniel face in public, and his expression darkened immediately. Chloe, is there some misunderstanding? Daniel Wilson's father, I'm embarrassed to say this in front of everyone and don't want to ruin the relationship between our families after so many years. Whatever Daniel did, he knows himself well, part ways cleanly. Chloe, it's not what you think, Daniel tried to explain again. I grabbed him and dragged him into the kitchen. Daniel Wilson, you clearly like my sister. I'm letting you to be together, so why can't you leave me alone? Chloe, yesterday's scene at the state-run restaurant caused a huge stir. If we break the engagement, people will think Sophia seduced her sister's fiancé. Sophia is delicate, not like you, strong enough to withstand others' judgment. Daniel lowered his head, his voice faint. Angrily, I grabbed his collar. So my happiness is sacrificed, why? Take your things and leave, he muttered. Don't show your faces in front of me again, or don't blame me for exposing your dirty deeds. Chloe, she's your sister, you can't do this. Leave. Hearing my roar, Daniel's parents rushed in. Chloe, don't be angry. I'll teach Daniel a lesson for you. My face was like iron. Daniel Wilson's father, it's completely over between me and Daniel. After Daniel and his father left, Mother grabbed my ear tightly. Chloe, do you think you're some goddess? Daniel Wilson is a young commander, and you dare to break the engagement? If it weren't for your sister letting Daniel go to you, would you even have such a good match? I called free, covering my ears. Give him to me. Wasn't it Sophia who rejected him for being a poor officer? Why should I cancel the engagement? Go ask your precious daughter what good she's done. Chloe Hall, what do you mean by that? I yanked open the door, still in my shoes, and stumbled outside. Come back and explain yourself. What has Sophia done? Over the years, I had quietly saved up some money. I couldn't stand living with my parents any longer, I was about to lose my mind. I rented a small house with a yard, remote and inexpensive. My neighbor, Hannah Moore, was kind and often brought me vegetables and fruits from her garden. I cleaned the yard thoroughly, satisfied with the place where I would build my new life. I quit my temporary job at the steel factory. The conditions were harsh, and staying there too long would ruin my health. As long as no one bothered me, I could focus on studying in peace. While my parents were at work, I secretly returned home to pack my things. There wasn't much to take, just a few worn-out clothes. I didn't have extra money for new clothes, so I had to make do. By evening, my parents returned, but the house felt completely devoid of life. Mother's voice pierced through the quiet, sharp and harsh. Chloe Hall, you're giving us face by not even making dinner. Where are you, Chloe Hall? Get out here this instant. When Sophia Young appeared, Mother's expression changed in an instant. Sophia, where's your sister? Mom, she's probably still out, hasn't come back yet. That shameless girl, out wandering around late at night, how disgraceful. Mother tied her apron and headed to the kitchen. Sophia, you must be hungry. I'll get dinner ready. In the kitchen, the clatter of pots and spatters mingled with her harsh curses at me. I remembered that in my previous life, Sophia Young was already cozying up to Michael Evans at this very moment. A sly smile curved my lips. Michael Evans versus Daniel Wilson, this could get interesting. Michael Evans wandered the streets lazily, whistling at passing girls. At that time, most girls were still modest, and they all scurried away shyly. I beckoned to a little kid nearby. Come here, give these letters to that young man, and I'll give you some candy. The kid's eyes lit up at the mention of candy. Pretty lady, I promise I'll do it. He snatched the candy from my hand, stuffing it eagerly into his mouth, face full of delight. Daniel Wilson had joined the army, while Sophia Young secretly wrote him letters, chronicling the tender affection between them. Anyone unaware would think they were a real couple. Daniel's replies, Sophia kept as trophies. It was only when I was cleaning that I accidentally discovered them. The kid tugged on Michael Evans' pant leg. Big brother, someone asked me to deliver these letters to you. One of Michael's cronies teased, Big bro, couldn't these be love letters from some girl who has a crush on you? Our big bro is the factory owner's only son, rich and handsome. Plenty of girls chasing him. Michael Evans flipped his hair, striking a pose he thought was charming. Stop talking nonsense. My heart belongs entirely to your sister-in-law, Sophia Young, he said. One of the little brothers snatched the envelope while Michael wasn't looking. Big bro, I'll read it for you. I've never received a love letter myself. They tore open the envelope. The words inside immediately changed their expressions. What's wrong? Why the long faces? The boys fell silent. Michael snatched the envelope back, his face darkening instantly. Anger flared as he crushed it into a ball. Sophia Young, that wretched woman, daring to toy with me, playing both sides. If I don't kill her, I'm not an Evans. The boys quickly handed him chilled sodas. Big bro, calm down. We'll catch Sophia Young and give her a beating. That Daniel Wilson seems to be Sophia Young's brother-in-law, and he's an officer too. We should report him to the army for messing around. Let's see how he survives there. That evening, the Miller family returned home, finding the front door open. They assumed I had come back. Father stormed in. Chloe Hall, you're home. Kneel and apologize to your mother. Michael Evans lounged on the sofa with his legs crossed, his men standing behind him, brandishing wooden and metal sticks, glaring fiercely at the Millers. Terrified, the three stepped back. Sophia Young bravely linked arms with Michael. Michael Evans, why are you here so late? You scared my parents. Put the sticks down. But Michael grabbed Sophia's braids and threw her to the ground, slapping her repeatedly. Her face swelled instantly, blood trickling from her mouth. Her hair was a mess, tears mixed with blood, her usual cold beauty gone. She looked like a raving madwoman. Michael Evans, why are you hitting me? He tossed the crumpled papers at her. Look at this. Cheating on me, tempting death. Sophia crawled on the ground, clutching the papers despite the pain. Seeing the contents, she panicked completely. She lunged to cling to Michael's leg. Michael Evans, listen, I didn't write these letters. Someone is trying to frame me. I was sincere with you, I would never betray you. Michael kicked her away. Do you think I'm stupid? This is clearly your handwriting. You're shameless, seducing your own brother-in-law. Her parents, worried, helped her up. Michael Evans, you must be misunderstanding. Chloe Hall is framing Sophia, she's always bullied her. I've heard you favor Sophia, but this your sister seducing her brother-in-law, yet blaming the elder sister your family is unbelievable. Michael waved his hands, and the boys around him fell into place. The younger men swarmed around. Before my father could even react, the back of his head took a heavy blow. This is a crime, I'm calling the police, he shouted. Michael Evans tilted his head back, the iron rod striking the ground. Looks like you don't want to live here. Believe it or not, one word from me could get you all fired. Brothers, show them a lesson hit. At his command, the rods rained down. Sophia Young was held in our parents' arms and wasn't hurt much. But my parents fared worse, bruised and battered. Sophia Young has cost me a lot of money, and now she's cheating on me. You owe me compensation, a total of 500 yuan. We don't have that much money. The younger men grabbed my father's hands. Fine, you won't pay, but leave these hands for us. My father cried out in pain, and a warm liquid ran down from him. I'll pay, let go of me. Such a grown man, and he just peed himself. Michael Evans struck my father's back again. Mother and Sophia Young huddled together silently. Bring the money quickly, he demanded. Trembling, my father shuffled to the bedroom and returned with a wad of crumpled bills, reluctant to hand them over. Michael Evans snatched them. Take it. And watch your family next time, I'll hit you every time I see you. Brothers, we're done here. Money settled, let's go. The crowd of men left in a chaotic mass. Sophia Young clung to my mother, crying. It must have been my sister. Daniel Wilson confessed to me, but she likes him. I refused him, so why is she framing me? Chloe Hall, I'll pretend this daughter never existed. Sophia Young turned, her gaze sharp and venomous. Our parents' life savings had gone down the drain. I was just unlucky I'd tried to avoid them entirely, yet still ran into their mess. Chloe Hall, stand still. Where have you been these past few months? Mother lunged at me viciously, yanking a strand of my hair. Chloe Hall, why did you frame Sophia? You've caused us so much trouble. I cast a sidelong glance at her, a cold smirk tugging at my lips. Frame her? I saw it with my own eyes. My sister and my fiancé all tangled up. I'm not the only one who saw it. All these years, you've believed everything Sophia said. So what? Sophia likes him, let her have him. But you've caused such a scene, how is she supposed to face anyone safely? When she seduced her own brother-in-law, did she ever think about me, her elder sister? Mother pressed a hand to her chest, lips trembling. From now on, I'll pretend this daughter doesn't exist. I don't even want to acknowledge you as my mother. I turned and left, walking away with an air of defiance. I poured all my energy into studying. I had memorized every detail in my books. Immersed in my work, the day of the college entrance exam arrived quickly. Confident, I entered the exam hall. The questions were all familiar, and I quickly solved them. With half an hour left, I even had time to double-check my answers. As expected, I performed well and was accepted into University A. I didn't tell anyone. I gathered all my belongings and left that heartbreaking place behind. Over the next few months, life at home quickly deteriorated. Sophia Young couldn't help complaining. Mom, there's not a penny left in the house. How are we supposed to live? My sister must have secretly saved money outside, living in luxury while we can barely afford a meal. Mother stared at the direction I had left, her words icy sharp. She's so unfilial. Don't blame me for being ruthless. Chris Anderson is recently widowed. He's willing to pay 300 yuan to marry a young girl. Isn't Chloe perfect for him? Sophia Young sneered. Mom, Chris Anderson is already 40 and has 2 kids. That's not appropriate. Who says? She's my daughter, sacrificing for us is her duty. Mother eagerly sought out Chris Anderson. He immediately handed over 300 yuan as a bride price. The next day, Mother went to find Chris Anderson again. Luckily, I was already at school, so they missed me. Unable to find me, Chris Anderson assumed Mother was tricking him. Chris Anderson's ex-wife had been killed by him, he wasn't about to let Mother off. Not only did she have to return the money, but she also endured a beating. I could only think, served her right. Evil gets its comeuppance. Daniel Wilson returned to the army, but his comrades looked at him strangely. Michael Evans wouldn't let him off, he reported him that night. The investigation revealed his improper relationship with his sister-in-law, and he was expelled from the army. Michael Evans' public outburst that night left the neighbors talking, and Sophia Young's reputation was utterly ruined. No normal family wanted her, any suitors were either widowers with children or unattractive old bachelors. Daniel Wilson came looking for me, but no one knew where I had gone. Sophia Young, unable to cope with poverty, forced Daniel Wilson into marrying her out of desperation. Later, I never heard about them again, they were strangers to me. At school, I threw myself into competitions and clubs, enriching myself. The luckiest part was meeting my current husband, who treated me wonderfully. We married after graduation. I cut off all contact with my parents. Sophia Young couldn't endure poverty and eloped with someone else. Our daughter is now 5. I returned to the place where I had once lived to visit. Sitting in the car, a knock on the window drew my gaze upward. "Do you still want the plastic bottles in the car?" It was Daniel Wilson. His hair was a mess, dark bruises ringed his eyes, oil stains still clung to his clothes, and he clutched a worn-out plastic bag in his hand. He looked so miserable. No wonder he'd been expelled from the army, and which factory would even hire him now? Seeing me, Daniel Wilson tried to dodge. "Daniel Wilson, it was me who saved you by the river back then," I called out. I signaled the driver to start, and a cloud of exhaust sprayed directly at him. Daniel Wilson snapped to attention and started running after the car, but it quickly pulled ahead, leaving him sprawled on the ground, crying in agony. I wondered if he had ever regretted it. He had once been a promising young commander, yet Sophia Young had ruined his future entirely. Looking down at my daughter, peacefully asleep in my arms, I exchanged a smile with my husband. I vowed silently, I would do everything to be a good mother. In the late stages of my pregnancy, I was driven to miscarriage by Luke Adams' adopted sister, and he locked me in a room, letting me die in agony. After my death, his parents helped forge alibis for them, allowing them to escape any legal consequences. Soon after, he effortlessly inherited all my assets and moved abroad with his family. The overwhelming hatred tethered my spirit, yet I could only watch as he and his adopted sister married, had children, and lived a life everyone envied. Then, I opened my eyes again. I was back reborn right when Luke Adams was bringing his troublesome family back into our home. Seeing me frozen in place, my mother-in-law hesitated, her eyes flashing, then she wiped her tears and collapsed, wailing to the gathered crowd. "Oh, what have I done to deserve this? I raised my son with so much effort, and now he's married to such a precious daughter-in-law, yet she looks down on us for being from the countryside, refusing to even let us in. My old man, what use am I still if my son ignores us? How will he take care of us when we grow old?" Zoe Morgan, the girl they adopted, fell to her knees, sobbing. "Mom, my brother and sister-in-law may look down on you, but I won't. I may be a child no one wanted, but you raised me, and now I'll take care of you." The onlookers, unaware of the truth, were moved and began sympathizing with them. "She's so unfilial, living in comfort herself, yet leaving to elderly people with nowhere to go." Exactly. So what if they're from the countryside? Without them, you wouldn't have the life you have today. In my past life, they played the same act in front of everyone, using people's sympathy to force me to let them in. But from that day on, they gradually took over the house my parents left me and constantly provoked me. Until the day I was driven to miscarriage by Zoe Morgan, and Luke Adams took the opportunity to snatch my phone and lock me in a room, letting me die in pain. With his parents fabricating evidence, my death was ruled an accident. No one thought any deeper. I could only watch, as a spirit, Luke Adams enjoyed the inheritance my parents left me and lived freely abroad with his family. Fortunately, fate smiled upon me was reborn. At this time, my reputation was still intact, and my child and I were alive and well. My vengeance could wait. First, I needed to win back the neighbors' trust, as they would all be useful in the future. With my pregnant belly, I hurried forward to help my mother-in-law up. Mom, look at what she's saying, it's as if it's my fault. When Luke Adams married into our family, I gave you over 200,000 yuan in bride price and even helped you build a house in the countryside. How could I look down on you? Luke Adams told me I was pregnant and said it would be safer for you to care for me than a nanny. I only expected you, Mom. I didn't realize my father-in-law and sister would come as well. I was upset he didn't explain properly, otherwise, I would have had someone pick you up. I would never let you come on your own. I glanced at Luke Adams, lingering invisibly beside me. I wasn't about to let him off either. Honey, didn't you say you sent your entire monthly salary to your parents? Then why do they look like they're living poorly in the countryside? What? His mother was shocked, unaware of this arrangement. She scrambled to her feet and demanded, Son, you sent your salary to me? Why haven't I received anything? Luke Adams avoided my gaze, scratching his nose nervously. Not received. That's impossible, I definitely sent it. Could someone have stolen it along the way? His mother believed him without question. She slapped her thigh, wailing. Who dares steal from me? May the heavens strike them down with lightning. Zoe Morgan stepped back, looking guilty. I couldn't help but scoff. When we married, Luke Adams claimed his family was poor. The 200,000 plus yuan I gave them went to pay debts. He said his parents were old and his sister was still in university, so he wanted to send his entire salary home. Back then, blinded by love, I agreed without a second thought. All the money he spent outside and on the household came from me, while his own earnings went almost entirely to Zoe Morgan. After all the commotion, anyone with a clear mind could see my mother-in-law's true colors. Her family had just been used as pawns. Many of the neighbors who had known us for years were already aware of my family's situation. My parents had passed away early, but they left me this house and a substantial inheritance. With that money, I could live comfortably for the rest of my life. Luke Adams was a university graduate from the countryside, handsome and talented. We hadn't known each other long before we got married. His family wasn't wealthy and couldn't afford a bride price, so he married into my family, with me paying the dowry. To avoid any resentment, I even rebuilt a house for them in the countryside. Of course, I wasn't a fool. Before we got married, I had a prenuptial agreement drafted by a lawyer, the property deeds were in my name, and the inheritance my parents left me was considered my premarital asset. Before my pregnancy, that agreement kept them from showing up at my door so brazenly. But after I became pregnant, everything changed. They assumed that since I was expecting, I could be completely manipulated. In my past life, I endured all their disgusting tricks for the sake of my unborn child. This time around, I intended to make them pay for what they had done. The crowd outside grew larger, and after understanding the situation, some of the younger, Internet's avid onlookers began mocking them. Oh, I thought this was one of those stories where a daughter-in-law mistreats her mother-in-law. Turns out it's a Phoenix man's family bullying an orphan. Don't call him a Phoenix man. That's just a scavenger type back in ancient times, he'd be a parasite. This kind of guy looks obedient to his wife on the surface, but in reality, he's darker than anyone. Pretty lady, don't fall for this whole family's act. My mother-in-law bristled at their words and rushed forward to confront them. Who are you to be gossiping about our family? She's an orphan. We haven't even looked down on her for having no parents, so who are you to say anything? Don't push us too far, I'll make my son divorce her. Let's see if anyone would want a pregnant woman like her. Get out of here or I'll drag you into trouble at my age. Seeing her ferocity, the crowd didn't want any trouble and slowly dispersed. After this commotion, Luke Adams' face turned pale. He had arranged this little stunt, thinking I wouldn't want to live with his family, but his plan backfired. My reputation remained at Amershund, while their family's ill repute spread far and wide. I couldn't help but enjoy their humiliation. I smiled and called out, "Why are you all just standing at the door? Come on in." Luke Adams was momentarily taken aback. "Mia, you're okay with my parents and Zoe staying here?" I smiled. "What do you mean my home, your home? Everything here is mine anyway. If your parents and sister traveled all this way, I can't very well let them sleep on the street, can I?" Luke Adams frowned, sensing something was off, but said nothing. His mother happily led his father and Zoe into the house. They had spent the whole day fussing, yet now they didn't even hesitate to collapse onto the sofa. My mother-in-law glanced around, satisfied. "My daughter-in-law, this place is really nice. If only we'd realized this sooner, we wouldn't have had this whole scene. Since ancient times, the man's supposed to run the house, not the woman. You should have done this long ago. Or better yet, why don't you just give all the money your parents left you, and this house, to Luke Adams? What can a woman do with money anyway?" I was furious her mental calculations were practically aimed at my face. Luke Adams glanced at me, feigning anger. "Mom, what are you saying? Mia's money is hers. As long as she's happy, I won't touch a single penny." I looked at him, stroked my belly, and said, "Honey, actually, Mom has a point. I'm pregnant, I can't manage all this money. How about I transfer it all to you in a few days?" At that Luke Adams and Zoe Morgan's eyes lit up. Though they wanted to jump at the offer immediately, they had to play it cool. Luke Adams suppressed his excitement and gently held me. "Wife, how could I take your money? It's your parents' legacy, it's yours to use." I looked at him, touched. "Are you really saying that?" Luke Adams felt a pang of unease, but nodded anyway. I grinned. "All right then. Mom, you heard that right? It's not that I don't want to give the money to Luke Adams, it's that he doesn't want it. So let's not discuss this again." My mother-in-law's face darkened, the enthusiasm she'd shown earlier had vanished. She tried to scold, but my father-in-law held her back. "Fine, say whatever you want then. But daughter-in-law, we've traveled all this way with nothing. Can't you spend a little money on us? Buy us some clothes? We don't need anything expensive, just something we can wear. Otherwise, if we go out like this, it'll be your shame, won't it?" I looked at the seemingly kind and honest face in front of me, barely holding back the surge of anger in my chest. My father-in-law seemed so inconstant. In reality, much of the damage to my reputation had been caused by him. In my previous life, he had more than once found excuses to spy on me while I bathed, shamelessly spreading rumors that I, his daughter-in-law, was trying to seduce him. My mother-in-law already held a grudge against me, and after believing his slanders, she found countless ways to torment me during the late stages of my pregnancy. I composed myself and said matter-of-factly, "Dad, you don't need to say anything. I already know. I'll transfer the money to Luke Adams right away so he can take you to the mall to pick up some things," my father-in-law said, satisfied. Once they left, I quickly had my friends purchase a dozen small surveillance cameras. Before they returned, I installed them in every corner of the house. As night fell, I returned to my room to rest, eagerly anticipating the show about to unfold. Meanwhile, Luke Adams returned home with his entire family. As soon as they stepped inside, Zoe Morgan eagerly began selecting rooms in the guest area. My father-in-law and mother-in-law hid in a room, scolding Luke Adams. "Son, do you know if she's having a boy or a girl?" Luke Adams, impatient, took a drag from his cigarette and exhaled. "Doesn't matter. Either way, the baby will have to go to, otherwise, wouldn't the insurance I bought be useless?" My father-in-law frowned. "Even if it's a boy, wouldn't that be a shame? We could always find a way to make her accidentally die after giving birth. If it's a girl, maybe we could sell her for a good price." My mother-in-law spat a few times, horrified. "What nonsense are you talking? If this child survives, all the money will belong to her. We'll have to be cautious every time we want to use it." Zoe Morgan was the one most eager to ensure the child wouldn't survive. She clung to Luke Adams, batting her eyes and whining. "Brother, we can't let this baby stay, you promised me. Once you get that woman's money, we go abroad together with Mom and Dad." If there's a child, how would people see me? Luke Adams doted on his adopted sister above all else, tending to her every whim with pleasure. Compared to Mia Carter, Zoe had far more influence over him. The moment she acted coy, his mind immediately wandered. My father-in-law and mother-in-law have long known about their relationship. Seeing his reaction, they gave a few reminders, and the two of them obediently left. I thought I was asleep, but I was sitting on the bed, thoroughly entertained, watching them through the phone feed as they indulged themselves. I never imagined Luke Adams would get involved with his adopted sister so early. Clearly, from the very beginning, his marriage to me had been motivated by my parents' inheritance. I had thought I had wronged him in the past, worried about hurting his pride, and had gone out of my way to accommodate him. Now, looking back, it was laughable. Late at night, Luke Adams returned to our room. The strong scent of perfume clinging to him unsettled me. Sleepily, I opened my eyes. Honey, why are you so late, and what's with the perfume? Luke Adams froze, caught off guard by my being awake. My parents have never been to the city, so I took them around a bit. That's why I'm late. As for the perfume, I must have brushed against someone in the mall. You aren't suspecting me of cheating, are you? I looked at him carefully. Was that guilt I detected? I turned over, yawned slowly, and said, "What are you thinking? How could I ever suspect you of cheating? After all, you love me enough to become a live-in son-in-law." With that I closed my eyes, paying no mind to Luke Adams' darkening expression. I knew that although he acted unconcerned about his identity, he was internally furious. The next morning, the door was suddenly pounded on, accompanied by my mother-in-law shouting, "Mia Carter, what time is it, and you're still in bed? If you don't get up early to cook, do you want to starve your father-in-law and mother-in-law? I've lived all my life and never seen a daughter-in-law act like you." I groaned and reached over to check Luke Adams, only to find he was already gone. He had planned this all along, leaving his parents and Zoe Morgan at home to torment me, while he hid away under the pretense of work, returning later to smooth things over. A cunning plan indeed. I opened the door just as my mother-in-law tried to barge in, missing her target and falling hard onto the floor. My father-in-law rushed over to help her up. Seizing the moment, I hurried to the kitchen, leaving them with nothing to say. Seeing the ingredients and seasonings, I happily set to work. I was used to having a maid cook my meals, but tonight, I would do it myself. Ever since marrying Luke Adams, control over the kitchen had effectively shifted into his hands. This was my first time cooking, and I did it only to meet their demands. As for whether it tasted good or even resembled real food, I couldn't say. By the time I finished and brought the dishes to the table, Zoe Morgan had just gotten out of bed. She stretched lazily, her eyes lighting up at the sight of the food. "Sister-in-law, you're really too kind, cooking breakfast for us while carrying that big belly. I'd heard from my brother that you can't cook, but looking at this, you're not that bad. Smells delicious." I didn't get angry at her provocation. "Is that so? Well then, make sure you eat plenty." My parents-in-law had gone to great lengths to make me get up and cook breakfast, and by now, they were starving. The aroma drew them to the table. My mother-in-law, frowning at the seemingly decent breakfast, still glared at me. "Look at you, cooking breakfast takes you this long. I wonder what your parents even raised you for." She then scooped a bowl of porridge at random and handed it to me. "Take it to the kitchen. By our rules, pregnant women are unlucky, you can't eat at the table with us." I accepted the bowl and went into the kitchen resignedly. From behind the door, I could hear my mother-in-law's triumphant voice. "See that? No matter what kind of woman, when she's in my hands, she obeys." Zoe Morgan eagerly chimed in. "Mom, you're amazing. Soon, this house will be ours to control." Huh. They wanted my house. Even if I sold it, I wouldn't let them get it for free. While they weren't paying attention, I quietly retreated to my room to watch the surveillance feed. Soon, I could hear their constant vomiting. Ugh. What is this smell, so disgusting? Mom. How did there end up being eggshells and laundry balls in this omelet? Zoe Morgan, refusing to believe it, took another sip of porridge only to retch immediately. Ugh, spit it all out. It tastes like disinfectant. What? My mother-in-law was furious. She stormed into the kitchen, porridge in hand, only to discover I wasn't there, which enraged her even more. She opened her mouth to curse. Ha! I thought you were a good one, so you've been trying to poison us. If you couldn't cook, why didn't you just say so? All this trouble, and now everything we ate is being vomited out. Oh my! What kind of daughter-in-law have I ended up with? I silently put on my headphones as their wailing gradually subsided. When I finally emerged from my room, Zoe Morgan stormed toward me, eyes blazing. Sister-in-law, what's the meaning of this? If you don't like us, just say so, why play such sneaky tricks? I pouted, feigning innocence. Sis, really? Didn't you just say the same thing? My brother said I'd never cooked before, and this was my first attempt. Aren't we supposed to be a loving family? Can't you show a little understanding? Besides, I'm pregnant. I haven't eaten a thing this morning, yet I cooked for you, and now you complain. Seems like you don't see me as family at all. In that case, maybe I should divorce your brother, that way, no one's bothering anyone. At that, my father-in-law, who had been watching the drama unfold, lost his temper. He slapped Zoe Morgan across the face. Who gave you the right to speak? Your sister-in-law is not for you to boss around. She grew up in the city, she's precious. How could someone like us from the countryside compare? Zoe Morgan looked incredulous, then buried her face in my mother-in-law's arms, crying loudly. The domineering mother-in-law, usually the one in charge, didn't dare say a word. I raised an eyebrow in surprise. Turns out, my seemingly meek father-in-law was the real one in charge. He rubbed his hands together, smiling kindly at me. Daughter-in-law, you're still pregnant, so don't get upset. If anything happens, just call your mother-in-law. And if she doesn't listen, tell me I'll deal with her. My mother-in-law tried to protest, but my father-in-law's glare silenced her. I nodded gratefully. I knew you treated me like family. In that case, Mom, from now on, you'll handle the household chores. As for the hateful, almost tangible glare my mother-in-law shot me, I pretended not to notice. That evening, when Luke Adams returned, my mother-in-law and Zoe Morgan began reporting every little grievance. I have no idea what he said, but somehow, they quieted down. From that day on, I ruled the house with ease, but I remained vigilant against any potential threats. When I was 7 months pregnant, my mother-in-law somehow got hold of a folk remedy and forced me to drink it. When I asked, she merely claimed it came from a shaman and that it would be good for the baby. Through the surveillance cameras, I saw that she wasn't giving me any harmless folk remedies at all. She was putting in substances harmful to the fetus, even mixing in her own saliva. I refused to take them, so she began sitting outside my room every day, deliberately making noise, making it impossible for me to eat properly or sleep peacefully. I knew that if this continued, my body wouldn't hold up. One day while out taking a walk, I started confiding in a few neighbors about my plight. They already knew the true nature of my in-laws, and hearing my story, their sympathy peaked immediately. Within days, local officials came by to educate my mother-in-law on the dangers of superstition and the untrustworthiness of folk remedies. After that, she quieted down for a few days. Meanwhile, my attention shifted entirely to my seemingly meek father-in-law. In the past few days, every time I prepared to take a shower, I noticed a dark figure lingering near the bathroom door. One afternoon, returning from a walk, I discovered the bathroom lock had been maliciously tampered with. No chill ran down my spine as memories of the previous life flashed through my mind. Just then, Zoe Morgan, stumbling in drunk from somewhere, barged into the bathroom while I was gathering my clothes. I pretended to yell at her from the doorway, then hid to watch the show. Soon enough, I saw my father-in-law sneaking into the bathroom. The next moment, Zoe Morgan's screams echoed through the house. My mother-in-law, drawn by the commotion, rushed to the door only to bump into my father-in-law, who scrambled out in panic. Seeing Zoe Morgan clutching her chest, my mother-in-law almost hyperventilated with rage. She lunged forward, grabbing Zoe by the hair, and began striking her wildly. You little slut, not only did you seduce my son, now you dare go after me too. See if I don't teach you a lesson today, you cunning little fox." At that moment, Luke Adams came home and quickly shielded Zoe. In the chaos, my mother-in-law was pushed to the ground. She froze for a moment, then scrambled up, crying and yelling. "You ungrateful wretch! How dare you push your mother for the sake of that little slut? I won't let this go." Luke Adams pressed a hand over her mouth and lowered his voice to warn her. "Mom, keep it down, die down. If Mia Carter hears you, our whole plan will be ruined." That hit the mark. My mother-in-law quieted down, though her gaze toward Zoe Morgan was full of calculation. Zoe, seeing this, covered her face and hid behind Luke. Watching this chaotic scene, I couldn't help feeling a rush of satisfaction. Over the following days, I often caught my father-in-law on camera spying on Zoe Morgan while she bathed or changed. Even more horrificously, I saw him sneak into her room while she slept, doing things that can't be described. Zoe Morgan must have some leverage over him, because she never told Luke Adams. Thinking back, I felt nauseated remembering that in my previous life, this disgusting man had once violated me. A month later, my belly grew larger, and the date I had been harmed in my previous life drew closer. But strangely, they were provoking me like before. They didn't make me so angry that I ended up in the hospital multiple times. Instead, they fed me well at every meal, made sure I didn't overexert myself, and acted like they were worried I might fall. Even the neighbors, who had always held prejudices against them, began to change their opinion. I guess they had altered their strategy. Late one night, after Luke Adams had left, I checked the cameras to see what they were up to and my eyes nearly popped out. This time, in their pursuit of excitement, they were going at it in the living room. Zoe Morgan kept asking Luke Adams whether he preferred her or me. Of course, he chose her. I clenched my stomach in disgust but couldn't turn off the feed, too afraid of missing crucial evidence. An hour later, I heard their conversation. "Big brother, when will you make it official, so I can be with you properly? You have no idea what people outside are saying about my parents. They say our family is nothing but leeches, just sucking the life out of that woman. Besides, Mom has started to mistrust me too. She's getting on my nerves. How are we supposed to live like this?" Luke Adams laughed in her arms. "What do outsiders know? Mia Carter is an orphan. Without me, she could have been robbed or worse by some random man. Better for me then. Don't worry. Once our reputation improves, I'll get rid of her and that little bastard in her belly too." The phone slipped from my hand onto the bed. I clutched my stomach, pale with shock. This was his own child. How could he be so heartless? Was money really more important than two living human beings? Shaking, I recorded everything they said, saving it as evidence. I didn't know the exact day they planned to act, but I knew one thing: Luke Adams had bought multiple accidental death insurance policies. If anything accidental happened to me, he wouldn't just inherit all my property, he'd also get a huge payout. From that moment on, I steeled myself, ready for whatever trap they were about to set. While they were all out, I had a secret compartment installed in my room, hiding a backup phone just in case. Since they planned to accidentally kill me, they certainly wouldn't do it openly. Based on the surveillance footage I had collected over the past few days, I could tell exactly what they were planning: gas poisoning. They even had the story worked out. When I was found dead, they would claim they had gone out to buy things for the unborn child, and because I was heavily pregnant, I stayed home alone. But then, due to hunger, I supposedly forgot to turn off the gas while cooking. And the windows, naturally, they'd say they were closed because it was cold and pregnant women couldn't bear the chill. It was a perfect, airtight plan. The only problem was they had no idea how to keep me obediently in my room. Day by day, I could sense their impatience growing. My father and mother-in-law were acting as if my house was their own. They hired renovation workers, tearing things apart at random and redecorating according to their own tastes. This house was my parents' legacy. I would never allow them to destroy it. But I couldn't confront them directly, not now. One wrong word, one argument, and it would play right into their hands. What frustrated me most were Zoe Morgan and Luke Adams. Ever since they decided on this plan to harm me, Luke Adams became increasingly indifferent toward me, while Zoe Morgan, with his tacit approval, started frequently entering my bedroom. Sometimes they even carried out their disgusting acts when I wasn't home. After each incident, I had to invent excuses to stay at friends' houses for a few days to calm myself. One day, I opened my bedroom door and caught Zoe Morgan rifling through my jewelry box. She was still wearing a high-fashion outfit I had bought before my pregnancy, but her body couldn't fill it out anymore, and she looked ridiculous. I spoke coldly, "What are you doing?" Zoe Morgan, perched on the bed like some self-important queen, legs crossed and wearing the token of love Luke Adams had given me around her neck, replied, "Sis, please don't be mad. Recently, I started seeing a boyfriend who's just as handsome and gentle as my brother. But I don't have nice jewelry or clothes. I was afraid he'd look down on me, so I wanted to borrow yours. You don't mind, do you?" I picked up the clothes she had worn and tossed them straight into the trash. If a man would look down on you for something like this, I suggest you break up with him sooner rather than later. Zoe Morgan seemed to expect this reaction. She placed a hand on her stomach, her eyes challenging me. "But I'm already pregnant with his child. What do you suggest we do?" My body froze. Zoe Morgan pregnant? Was it my father-in-law's or Luke Adams'? A crooked smile formed on my lips. I could sense some real entertainment coming my way. I stared at her with anticipation. "What's with that look?" she asked. "I'm just being honest," I replied. "Being pregnant isn't a small matter. Do your parents and my in-laws know?" Zoe Morgan's smile faded as she scrambled to explain. "They're too old. It's better not to worry them about this." I laughed quietly. "How can that be? Haven't you and your mother-in-law always said that pregnant women are worthless? In that case, shouldn't your mother-in-law hurry up and marry you off?" Zoe Morgan panicked. "Are you deaf? I told you, they don't need to worry. Even if she's anxious, it won't matter. I'm determined to make this public. Since she wants to flaunt it in front of me, she'll have to face the consequences. I couldn't afford another illegitimate child in the family." Honestly, my cheap mother-in-law had always impressed me with her decisiveness. I only needed to speak a little truth, and within days, Zoe Morgan's pregnancy ended unexpectedly. I had assumed she would only suffer a little, never imagining it would end like this. Maybe it was because I was pregnant myself, but a small pang of guilt crept in. For the past few days, I had actually put aside my hatred and carefully tended to her confinement period. "Sis, can I come in and talk for a bit?" I opened the door to see Zoe Morgan weakly entering, sitting on the bed, her gaze fixed on my belly. Thinking of her heartbreak, I patiently warned her. "You haven't finished your confinement yet. How can you just wander out for fresh air?" Zoe Morgan didn't answer. Her eyes stayed locked on me, a sinister smile slowly spreading across her face. I knew something was wrong. Suddenly, a wave of dizziness swept over me. They had gotten some kind of sedative. Were they finally going to make their move early? Before I could react, I heard Zoe Morgan's piercing laughter. "Mia Carter, look at you now, always acting like a rich lady, and now you're crawling on the floor like a dog. If it weren't for your brother planning for you to die in a gas accident, do you think this would be easy? I want you and your child to die for my child." Not far away, I heard Luke Adams' voice. "All right, grab her phone and let's get out of here before anyone gets suspicious." Zoe Morgan hummed in agreement, then glared at me with pure malice. "Mia Carter, just wait here and die. My brother and I will make full use of your inheritance and live a life everyone envies." Soon, their footsteps faded, and I slipped into complete unconsciousness. When I woke up again, it was pain that brought me back. I looked down and realized my water had broken. My body felt weak from the prolonged unconsciousness, and the air was thick with gas. I refused to give in. I had already been given a second chance at life. Why should I repeat the same tragedy? Memo. I still had a chance. Clutching onto sheer willpower and long-standing hatred, I slowly crawled to the secret compartment I had installed and retrieved the backup phone. With trembling fingers, I dialed the 3-digit number I had obsessed over in my previous life. After explaining everything, I collapsed into darkness once more. When I woke up again, it was in a hospital room. The sharp smell of disinfectant reassured me was safe. A policewoman guarding my bed explained that my husband and his entire family had been detained. They were waiting for me to recover so I could provide critical evidence. I told her about the many surveillance cameras I had installed at home, and that the confiscated phones contained crucial evidence. As soon as she heard this, she immediately organized a raid. I moved slightly in bed, and a sharp pain shot through my abdomen. Panic surged. I instinctively cupped my stomach. It was flat. My child. Just as fear gripped me, a nurse walked in holding a tiny infant. Tears streamed down my face. I carefully took her in my arms. Her skin was soft and pink, her lips and nose delicate. She was my daughter, almost identical to the pictures of me as a child. After longing for her across 2 lifetimes, I had finally brought my angel safely into the world. Once discharged, I went to the police station to see Luke Adams. He, along with my father and mother-in-law and Zoe Morgan, were detained together awaiting trial. When Luke saw me, he immediately tried to play the emotional card. "Wife, our child has been born, right? She must need her father now. Please forgive me, I promise, when I get out, I'll be a good husband and a good father." I looked at him coldly. "I don't want to forgive you. It was my father, mother and that vile woman who forced me into this, the gas plan. That was Zoe Morgan's idea too. I was completely innocent." My in-laws knew that their only hope now was through their child, so they remained silent. Only Zoe Morgan couldn't believe what she was hearing. The man who had always pampered her now abandoned her without hesitation, pushing all responsibility onto her. She laughed hysterically. "Luke Adams. Is that all you can do? When you were doing those things behind me at Carter's back, did you ever think about today? Serves you right for being called a Phoenix man, you're such a coward." "Police, I confess everything, this was all Luke Adams' plan." "Shut up." My mother-in-law grabbed Zoe Morgan's hair, trying to silence her. But Zoe didn't flinch. She kicked my mother-in-law to the ground and, having nothing left to fear, recounted everything: my father-in-law's assaults, my mother-in-law causing her miscarriage, everything. The detention room descended into chaos, only quelled when the police intervened. Before leaving, Luke Adams called out to me. "Mia Carter, you think you're safe now? I'm telling you, we are married. No matter what the judge rules, this will only count as domestic violence. Even a clean-handed judge can't fully unravel family matters. At most, I'll sit in jail a few years. When I get out, you and your child won't escape me." Even at the brink of death, he was still arrogant, pathetic, really. But thinking carefully, his threat wasn't entirely impossible. He had underestimated the power of public opinion. I edited the surveillance footage I had collected over the past few months and posted it online. Soon, a fierce debate erupted. Most sided with me, though a few trolls still wrote disgusting comments. Honestly, did this woman really do nothing wrong? What did she do to push a man and his family this far? I can understand the man's family. The brother and adopted sister grew up together. Suddenly someone else interfered. It's upsetting, right? Such nauseating comments occasionally appeared in my section, but quickly, netizens defended me fiercely. As online discussions gained traction, the trial for Luke Adams' family began. Initially, they were sentenced to a decade or so for attempted murder, which outraged the public. Appeals and petitions followed, citing the case's societal impact. In the second trial, the court handed Luke Adams and his family life imprisonment. Life imprisonment, it meant their lives were ruined, and in a way, I had avenged myself for the injustices of my past life. I thought that would be the end of it. But surprisingly, even in prison, there were people with a sense of justice. When they learned about everything Luke Adams and his family had done, they looked down on them with utter contempt. Life behind bars turned out to be extremely harsh for them. They were underfed, deprived of basic comforts, and beaten by others at night. But what did any of that have to do with me? I moved away from that city, a place filled with bitter memories, taking my daughter with me. With the inheritance my parents had left me, I was determined to give her a life of freedom and happiness. I traveled the world with her, pouring all my love into nurturing her growth. And she lived up to every expectation. Gradually, she became a confident and kind-hearted girl. Our time together was still long, at least I could be with her for many, many years to come.